Okay, we're back with Constellation Episode 7, Through the Looking Glass, written by Peter Harness, directed by Joseph Cedar. We pick up right where we left off in Episode 6. And Episode 7, I think it's safe to say we're switching back and forth through what we now know sort of the two main realities of this show. There are two Alice's, one Joe that seem to continually sort of go in different places, find themselves in the other realities, other universes that are near or are part of where this cabin is out on the frozen lake. Both Alices end up finding the other rundown cabin, which is a more sort of dilapidated version of the place where they have been living, and they find a way to communicate with one another through this tape recorder. They can send each other messages. They determine that Joe is the reality that she is in the wrong one, but they don't know how to get her to return. Joe does eventually find the cabin and finds the other Alice, not her daughter Alice, carries her to safety after the cabin catches on fire. Joe attempts to revive her and tells the Alice from the world that she's not a part of, that she should return to her father, find him, stay with him. This leads Joe to being carried off by some authorities to where we understand she has been taken to Irina. Meanwhile, Henry, Frederick, and Magnus arrive at the cabin with the police. They've been tracking Joe. They thought kidnapped Alice. They find Alice. They're able to get her rescued. They take Joe into custody. And while that's going on, Henry and Bud briefly switch bodies. Again, why, how? We're going to talk through that. Henry sees Paul, who was shot. He's able to call 911. Bud is back in what is his original world, although he doesn't necessarily belong there anymore. And from what we know, the cow device has been left out near the snow by the cabin. In the hospital, Alice sees the Valia, who we know is Irina, who offers to take her to her mother. And the last part of the episode, Alice wakes up, tells Magnus they have to get Joe back from Irina. So limited quote unquote space within this episode. Sort of a lot of back and forth. Where are we? Who are we with? What reality are we in? In terms of realities, we have a little bit more clarification on what we're dealing with now, I think.
Yeah, it's weird the level to which I watched this episode. I thought, well, that was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I'm writing about it. Oh, well, you have to keep straight. Which Alice am I talking about? And which Magnus am I talking about? And all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the way that they've structured things, giving us the cabin scenes earlier, um, we'd already kind of been putting those together for ourselves. We're wondering if they hung together
Yes.
in this way, and we getting just a lot of it felt like confirmation of yes, this connects up to that, this happens, and then that.
Yep.
But of course, you've got the one reality bleeding into the other, or some thought of this, the cabin in particular, and the space around it, as I guess a liminal space
Hmm.
between the realities where something's going on. And how many cabins? Maybe four, though. So it's I
I
count
think there's
four.
four cabins and 92 paintings from what I can tell so far. That's
Right.
what.
And sometimes there's a fire that's in the painting.
Yeah.
Not the painting's not on fire. The fire's in the painting. There's a difference.
So should we assume at this point, maybe this is presumptuous, should we assume that the cabin is this liminal space, or is it because the cow is there nearby? Do we think the cabin is some sort of portal between what's happening? That's why what happens to Henry and Bud. How do we take that?
Yeah. Again, I think there is a question of, is it the cow that's
Yeah.
doing this? Because Joe does take it to the cabin in the one reality. Um, maybe that's where we're going. Personally, I'm almost going to feel a little bit disappointed if they end up hanging everything on the cow,
Yep.
but it's certainly important. And look, I should give my mea culpa. Sort of at the beginning. This is how I started my article, and I messaged you about this when I realized this.
Don't
It
be
was
too
with
hard on yourself. This is complex stuff we're dealing with here.
it was in this episode when Joe says that she does not remember the cow prior to the accident. And I went, uh-oh. And I had stubbornly been thinking that back in episode 1, we saw Joe and Alice speaking Swedish to one another while Paul was working on the cow, right? And I know I said on here last week, so we've got at least three realities, right? Because there's one where Alice speaks Swedish and the cow exists. It turns out not so much. If you go back and rewatch that scene in episode 1 and really watch it closely, it is clear that we're actually switching back and forth between two realities as the scene unfolds.
Yeah. I mean, first, just fascinating because you would never assume that as you're watching it through the first time. But to be able to sort of now seamlessly look back and how they did that, pretty interesting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's virtually the first scene of the show. It's not. I think the first scene is at the cabin, and then it goes to space. But it's the second scene of the entire show. So you don't have a handle on what's going on. You're not going to be thinking that, oh well, this is going back and forth between two realities, or however we put that exactly when you're watching it initially. But so if you're watching the scene closely, what you see is that sometimes Paul's working on the Cal device, but in some shots he isn't. And it doesn't match up exactly, I don't think, to when they're speaking Swedish and when they're speaking English. But it does kind of seem like maybe Alice is wearing different clothes, but you can only see it through the iPad. I think every time you see her in person, she's wearing the same sweater. So you really kind of have to watch it closely. But if you do, the whole thing is going back and forth between the two realities.
Yeah, and that's kind of the stuff like you were talking about that shows that pay off these kind of things to go back and revisit and say, oh, wow, look at this creative decision. Look at what they were able to do that sort of to the naked eye we couldn't detect back then. But now that we're seeing what's happening, we can go back and look and say, ah, that makes sense. Why it's Swedish to English, different clothes, Cal, no Cal. Now it all sort of is getting pieced together as this puzzle starts to slowly take shape.
Right. And then I think it was last week, right? Paul is dead. You get where we revisit it, and then there are the two Joes. So
Mhm.
there's like the splitting of the realities there. And so I still think there might be more than two. It depends how we read all the stuff at the cabin,
Yeah.
right? Because there's more than two cabins. Um, but it definitely seems that there are two main ones. And I wonder if there's a third
Yeah.
tying into, I mean, also tying into with Bud and Henry. We've talked about this before because their situation seems different. You've got
It
a
does.
Joe who's
Yeah.
alive and a Joe who's dead, a Paul who's alive and a Paul who's dead. Bud and Henry are both alive, but in the
Right.
different universes.
And we have sort of hypothesized perhaps that was it, or do we have the situation with Joe and Paul because one died and the other didn't? So just sort of switch places. And Bud slash Henry's situation, did both survive whatever this accident was on Apollo 18, but it still led to them switching places. I mean, clearly they have. And so
Yeah.
that's why he keeps, wondering about this death in space on his board throughout throughout every episode.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So they switch places, but I'm still wondering about that question of whether there's a third one who died. I don't know if we'll get an answer. Yeah, I don't know if I should stop
Yeah.
thinking about that. One possible answer is that it all has to do with the cow,
Yeah.
and that even though the stuff that happened to Henry and Irina occurred in the past, that we're dealing with retrocausality, which is also a concept in quantum mechanics. So
I admit I clicked on that link in your piece in your recap this week, so I can familiarize myself with
it's like,
that.
what are we talking about? There's not a good way to make the concept more intuitive.
Right.
It's the concept that an event in the future could be the cause of an effect in the past,
Yep.
and it's a theory out there to explain some of the quantum weirdness that you find in the experiments. Um,
You said it
so
better than I could. Yeah, I just I'm just still very curious as we discussed at length last week about which questions will be answered and which will not.
you
Sort
would get
of what is the ultimate cause of this, of this thing? Is it a device? Is it a location? Is it a phenomenon in space? And are there important places, important times, important moments, sort of the loss theory that sort of joins things and allows things to happen or take place that would not otherwise happened. And this cabin or this device or this moment in time is one of those moments.
Yeah. So you mentioned we've been talking about Bud and Henry just now,
Yeah.
and you mentioned them seem to switch places. Um, I don't know that it was temporary. I think you said something like that in your summary. Maybe it seemed that way, but I don't know that we saw them switch back. It kind of seemed to me that the episode left us with Henry now as Bud and Bud as Henry.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that I agree with you. So if I said something about it being temporary, that would have been incorrect because I think that y- yes, where we leave it, we have seen, I guess, them back where they were decades ago, but now also strangely in unfamiliar places because they've been away from those original realities for so long.
Right. I mean, so even if Bud is back to his original world, he no longer belongs there. I think
Right.
you said, I think I said in my recap, right? I mean, I think everyone could feel that, right? He's out of
Yeah.
place. He's Joe Hansen Alice coming out of the burning cabin. He doesn't know who she is. He just sets her down
Exactly.
in the snow, walks away. Not a good guy.
As one would do, I guess, when you're a drunken failure in another universe.
And he makes some comment like he thinks he's just in his underwear. So I don't know. Maybe they haven't fully switched places if he's still feeling that way because the version that is in the apartment in LA is kind of in his underwear, I
Yeah,
guess. And so I don't know. But yeah, we did find out that Paul is not dead for the moment. He's not in good shape,
very much not in good shape.
but Henry Henry now as Bud has called an ambulance for him. So um we'll see where all of that's going. It definitely seems like that dynamic is really central to how things are going to wrap up.
Yeah, and for as odd as it sounds, both seem to have an incentive or motivation to get back to where they were before when I'm sure for a long time they thought that they did not want to, or that they did not want to be where they ended up. Maybe not so much for Bud, who I guess is left with a dead body in his floor, but Henry certainly wants to get back to his explanation, understanding of how he can fix this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas Bud, okay, he's been feeling resentment about being spit into this world where
Yeah.
what happened isn't what he remembered. So to what extent was Bud doing this on purpose? Of course, we saw him earlier on saying he's gonna, yeah, I'm coming for you, Henry. I made you piss your
Yeah.
pants, the way that it occurs in this episode doesn't seem intentional so much as a slippage.
Yeah.
And hasn't been a lot of talk about the lithium lately, but there is something of an implication of the lithium as doing something to block the slippage, which I don't know how we read that, but
Yeah, I think that Henry says to Magnus in this episode, I just took my pills. That's what I did to fix that. I just took my pills.
took my pills and got to work,
Yeah,
you
that's right.
know. Joe hasn't been taking her pills, you know. So
No.
at a certain level, it's almost like, is Constellation an extended advertisement for taking your damn pills? Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. But what do you think about the cabin stuff? The fire, I mean, it's kind of weird. Joe, she doesn't set the fire,
Yeah.
not on purpose, but accidentally she does, right? The one version of Joe sets her like kerosene lamp and then the wind blows and knocks it over and the cabin's on fire, but then she goes to no, she returns to the same cabin that's on fire, but when she gets inside, it's no longer on fire. Now she's in one of the cold cabins that's either one or two, but must be two because one version of Alice is in one of them and the other version of Alice is in another. And at first, I thought the cat was dead in one and alive in the other, which is a clear nod to Schrodinger's cat. But then there's also a scene where there's two cats, one of them's alive and the other one's frozen and dead, and all kinds of weird. And the cabin's not on fire, but there is fire within the world, it would seem, of the Hugo Simberg painting. And I don't know. Thoughts about all of this?
I have no idea what you just said, but I mean, from what from what I understand from those scenes is, that rundown, dilapidated cabin is the place where the Alices are able to find their counterpart. They're able to communicate. There's something there because, as you said, that cabin itself is not on fire, and yet I believe that's the one where Joe saves Alice from the smoke, right?
It
Um,
becomes on fire.
becomes on fire.
It's as though the fire escapes the painting.
Yes,
I
yes.
struggle with how to put
Approximately,
this in
yeah.
writing about it.
Wouldn't it be something if, all this talk about it, if the paintings were the actual liminal spaces this whole time? And, I think that we picked up on that pretty early.
Yeah, we did, right? And the change, I think there was a third version of the painting
Mhm.
in this episode. And I still don't have I feel like I still don't have a full line on it. I'm hoping to maybe land on a better interpretation
Yeah,
after next week. We only got one to go,
yeah.
so why rush it?
I
Are
think
we
that
going to get more information?
and I forget the name of the painting in this particular episode where it changes, but it is one again where the original painting has a picture of the devil. In our episode, we see that painting, but the devil is changed to the angel. So again, sort of these two
Yeah.
parts of the same of the same thing that are interchanging in this one space, whether again it's the painting, the cabin, or whatever.
Yeah, we'd previously seen the poor devil
Hmm.
in the place of the wounded angel. Now we see the wounded angel in the place of the poor devil, basically. Um, so
Yeah.
angels, devils, okay, this the symbolism is clear. How does that fit in with what's going on in Constellation overall? Um, is it like one fallen world? And no, because it's still a wounded angel. See again, I don't have a full interpretation yet. Hopefully, I do when the season's over.
And now I wonder how it will relate to that specific devil angel imagery change back and forth, relate to, sort of this idea of, say, Irina and Evalia, because we see in this episode,
Yeah,
we don't necessarily see Irina in this episode, but we see the version of Irina that we have not seen before physically, which is the Valia that appears to Alice at the end. And so, again, two wildly different, but still same versions of the same person. Both seemingly saying the same thing. Go, get your mother. Go, I can take you to your mother. She needs to be free from, where she is. So again, I think that the imagery sort of tracks between the two. That's just sort of my read on as I think about two wildly different versions of what could be the same thing. Irina and Valia are the closest to that. Maybe Henry and Bud as well, but Irina and Valia sort of fit that mold really well.
yeah, I agree. And apparently, Alice has seen the Valia before
Hmm.
and heard the Valia before, and this is very weird. So I feel the need to say here, there's no explaining this through reference to quantum mechanics.
No.
Whatever you make of all the other stuff, references to quantum entanglement, retro causality, whatever, I'm not aware of anything whatsoever that could offer a possible explanation of a dead person appearing in a different reality and talking.
Yeah. Nope. That's just science fiction now, my friend. That's the world that we're in.
Yeah, we're outside of the realm of something you could relate to actual scientific theory. So what's going on here? Clearly, I think that's going to be central
Yeah. That
because
has to be.
apparently Joe has been taken into the care of Irina. Multiple people have said, "Oh, Irina understands what's going on. Irina's going to help you, right?"
Yeah.
And so you could draw that connection, I guess, with the angel and the devil. Is
Yeah.
Irina going to be helpful? Is she like the guardian angel, or is she more like the devil trying to deceive you
Yeah.
into accepting a reality that doesn't match up with what you know happened to you.
I, I think that is very likely to happen. There is, which won't necessarily say here, but there is a log line that exists for the finale that's out in the public. This is not just something that's buried behind screeners or whatever. That sort of implies that there is some understanding and resolution coming, and it
Hmm.
involves where Joe is. And so I cannot help but think that this Irina Valia character is going to play into that, considering, again, from all the way back in the first scene, we see what we now understand to be Valia as the dead cosmonaut. And now, again, the last moments before this finale, we see it again. It's going to come up, I think, and play a major role. As you may have said, devil / guardian angel. Who do we believe as we're trying to get to the bottom of things?
Yeah. And why is she saying, come with me, child?
Yeah.
Come away. I'll take you to your mama. No, you won't. That's
Yeah.
not a live possibility.
Yeah.
I'll take you to the other reality where your mother's dead.
Yeah. I did wanted to make
Maybe.
a reference to we've talked about the idea of this girl being named Alice, the references to Alice in Wonderland, the title of this episode being Through
Of
the Looking
course. Yeah.
Glass. And just interesting that in Through the Looking Glass, in that book, Alice is playing with a white kitten named Snowdrop, interestingly, right, considering where they are in the cabin,
Yeah.
and playing with another black kitten, right? So sort of this duality there, just sort of pondering the idea of what the world is like. And so now we get this idea of Alice here, two versions of her, two versions of the cat, Schrodinger's cat. It's just sort of this idea of through the looking glass, sort of find out what the real answers are to things that she's been trying to figure out for a long time. This is Alice, and through the looking glass now, this is, as we always thought, it's going to come down to one or maybe both versions of Alice going in search of answers of what's really happening here, maybe helping her mother along the way, maybe getting an understanding of or an acceptance of where both mothers are and what they're doing. But yeah, I think that they're using this as a device to set up what, certainly with Irina and Valia, but also what Alice will do in the next episode.
Yeah, I think so. And the references are definitely there.
Yeah,
They communicate through the mirror again.
right.
Um, I made the title of my recap a reference to something in the book, but I
Yeah.
don't have anything more to do with that. Right? It's like, what am I going to call this? The referencing the bit about what the name of the song is called. That's not the song. It's Addict's Eye. No, that's just what the name of the song is called. Maybe it fits in to some degree because there is a question of
Right.
how we talk about this stuff and how language lines up with reality
Yeah.
and these differences we're grappling with. So I think that's definitely a source of inspiration here, and that's
Yeah.
part of what's cool. They're clearly blending literary sources of inspiration with scientific ones and so on. But now we've got a science fiction show.
Yeah. I think they've done that very, very well. And it's interesting watching this show and then now going through Three Body Problem, where both have so far. I remember us talking about this in the first episode. Oh boy, how much quantum mechanics and theoretical physics I'm gonna have to understand to really appreciate this show. But they've done a good job of positing what is necessary and did that very early on, and it's helped us through it. We've not had to be burdened down by anything more. We can just sort of grow in the knowledge as the rest of the characters do throughout it.
Yeah, yeah. And well, to throw this in there, we've been talking about the Valia, we've talked about Irina, just to remind everyone, that she was what hit the ISS to cause the accident.
Yeah.
Back in episode 1.
Yes.
Is she also what did she also hit the ISS and cause the accident in the world where Paul survived?
Yeah. I think that's unknown at this point.
I think it's unknown.
Yeah.
I think I've seen some people suggesting you can like kind of see her floating in space or something, but I don't know. I haven't seen it. Give
Okay.
me a screenshot, because I don't see it. Um,
Yeah.
I don't see that indication. If not, though, what did happen there, right? How is there an accident in the world where the Cal doesn't exist and the dead cosmonaut doesn't hit the space station and so on and so forth?
Exactly.
Again, maybe the Cal device explains everything. I kind of hope not. It certainly doesn't explain the Valia
Yeah,
that
it does.
appears to Alice. Um, so we'll see where that's going. Oh, that was the other thing I want to say before we wrap up. Poor Magnus.
That guy, he's had a hard time of it.
Both Magnuses,
Yeah,
but in both realities, just I feel really bad for him.
I know. Just
Yeah,
get that guy back in the classroom, put him with his kids, let him have some time with Alice. He's going through it right now.
yeah. Well, one version of him, his wife died in space, but his daughter's being really weird. He doesn't know what to do. He thinks that Alice just won't accept her mother's death, that she's in
Yeah,
that kind of denial, which would make sense. But now he's having to grapple with the fact that there actually is some more weird stuff going on.
yeah.
And he sees Joe at one point, but it seems like he's still not sure if he's willing to believe that he actually saw that. So yeah, he's not in great shape. And then
No,
the other one just thinks his wife is super mentally ill and almost got their daughter killed.
that's right. And almost killed him in the process.
Yeah, exactly. So like, not great. Neither version's in a good spot.
Poor Magnus.
Poor
My guy
Magnus.
Magnus having a tough time.
So hopefully things work out for
We got one
him
more
to
episode to find out.
some degree. Yeah, hopefully things work out. Yeah, one more episode to go. I just started thinking, what would a happy ending look like? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't know that a happy ending is possible.
I don't think that's where we're going.
And of course, we don't know whether they're planning further seasons. At least I've not seen anything about that. So we can speculate about that more after next week's episode. And who knows? Sometimes Apple TV Plus will like renew something right as the last
Mhm.
episode comes out. Um, or maybe this is a limited series. It's only these 8 episodes and it's a full
Yep,
story, and we'll see how it feels. And we'll be back talking about that next week. Anything else you want to hit on, Ryan, on this episode?
that's it. Really looking forward to this finale next week. We're gonna. I won't be able to wait much longer after we get done recording here. I'm gonna go tackle it tonight, probably.
Right on. Yeah, looking forward to it. And we'll be back next week talking about episode 8, the season finale. Thanks always for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave us like a rating and review wherever you're listening. If you're on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media. Search for TV Obsessive. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Till then.